We have seen that the atom is the basic particle making up the elements. But atoms do not always exist as separate, detached particles. In fact, in the Earth's environment, they rarely do. Instead, atoms interact with each other and connect together. Two atoms may connect, or there may be many. The groups of atoms that result we call molecules. A molecule is simply two or more atoms bonded together. For example, two atoms of hydrogen can bond together to form the diatomic hydrogen molecule. It is the same for oxygen. When oxygen atoms unite, they form the diatomic oxygen molecule. These unions are accomplished by the sharing of electrons between atoms. Atoms of different elements can interact with each other as well. For example, two hydrogen atoms can combine with one oxygen atom to form a molecule of water. This is a simple example of a chemical reaction, which is the interaction of atoms to create new substances. In this instance, hydrogen and oxygen have reacted and bonded together to create water. A chemical bond is the powerful force of attraction which keeps atoms together in a molecule. Every molecule stores a certain amount of potential energy within its chemical bonds. The water molecule may be represented by the symbols H2O. This is known as the chemical formula for water. This formula shows that each molecule of water contains two hydrogen atoms, represented by H2, and one oxygen atom, represented by an O. Water is an example of a very simple chemical compound. A compound is two or more elements chemically bonded together. Living things are made up of many thousands of different compounds. Life can be thought of as a vast series of interconnected chemical reactions, for life itself is a chemical process. Every heartbeat and every breath of living things has a basis in chemistry, the marvelous interaction of matter and energy.
The bright flame in this flare is generated by a combination of elements. The active ingredients are a blend of more than one element. A compound is a pure substance that is made of more than one element. Nearly everything you come in contact with is made of different combinations of elements, or compounds. There are millions of compounds. While some compounds, such as water, are made of hydrogen and oxygen, others are quite complex, such as plastics, made of dozens of compounds. Compounds are made of molecules. If we were to break down this piece of salt into the smallest piece of matter that still had the properties of salt, we would have a molecule. A molecule is two or more atoms with specific properties that have bonded together. It is the smallest piece of a compound that still has the properties of a compound. These are salt molecules, with a large atom of chlorine and a small atom of sodium. If we were to break apart this salt molecule, we would have sodium and chlorine atoms, but we would not have a salt molecule. It is possible to separate a molecule of water. For example, by passing an electric current through this blue-colored water, the water molecules are separated into oxygen and hydrogen gas, as seen here by these rising bubbles. In order to work more easily with elements, scientists have developed a system of letters and numbers, or chemical symbols, used to represent elements. Chemical symbols use one or two letters from the name of the element. For example, the element sulfur, shown here, is symbolized by the letter S. Sometimes two letters are used. Such is the case with copper, symbolized by the two letters capital C and small u. Sometimes the chemical symbols are derived from the Latin word for the element, as is the case with lead, which has the chemical symbol Pb from the word plutonium. As we discussed earlier, elements can be represented by chemical symbols. Chemical symbols can be placed together to make a chemical language. Different chemical symbols can be placed together to make a chemical formula which can represent a compound, such as copper sulfate. A chemical formula is an abbreviated way of symbolizing chemical substances. For example, you may already be familiar with the chemical formula for water, H2O. The H stands for hydrogen, and the O stands for oxygen. What does the 2 stand for? The 2 means that there are 2 atoms of hydrogen. The small 2 is called a subscript. A subscript is a small number written below a letter or number. It indicates the number of atoms in the compound. Here you can see sulfuric acid reacting with a piece of metal. Sulfuric acid is important in making fertilizers, fabrics, and plastics. The chemical formula for sulfuric acid is H2SO4. It is made of 2 atoms of hydrogen, 1 atom of sulfur, and 4 atoms of oxygen.
Minerals are made of elements. Elements are Earth's basic building blocks. An element cannot be divided into other substances. However, elements can be chemically put together to form new substances. Earth has only about 100 different elements. Included are hydrogen, oxygen, silicon, carbon, and iron, to name a few. Most minerals are made of 2 or more elements chemically joined together. When elements join chemically, they may produce something that seems quite different from the parts. For example, the elements silicon and oxygen together make quartz. We breathe oxygen as a gas, but in chemical combination with silicon, it produces a very hard rock. The element chlorine by itself is poisonous. Combined with sodium, it becomes everyday table salt. Earth's 100 building block elements mix chemically in thousands of ways to make thousands of different minerals.
The unique chemistry of carbon gives it special properties for bonding. The substances formed can glitter like stars and power our cars. The compounds that make up and support life on Earth are based on carbon. Organic substances are molecules with structures based on carbon. Many of the substances found in living and deceased organisms are organic compounds. In fact, carbon is the foundation of the molecular structure of all plants, animals, and microorganisms. Life as we know it would not be possible without the element carbon. Scientists know about more than 1 million carbon compounds, and every year they find some more. Graphite, diamond, fossil fuels, sugar, and marble are just a sampling of common organic compounds. Carbon is in the second row or period of the periodic table, and it has the atomic number 6. In its ground state, a carbon atom has 6 electrons in 2 energy levels. The outer energy level, or valence level, contains 4 electrons. However, elements in the second period need 8 electrons to fill their valence level. According to the octet rule, atoms in the first and second periods tend to gain, lose, or share electrons to have a full valence level. half of carbon's valence level is filled with electrons. A carbon atom usually satisfies the octet rule by sharing electrons with other atoms in covalent bonds. Single bonds share 1 electron from each bonded atom. Double bonds share 2, and triple bonds share 3. Carbon is unique in its ability to bond in such a variety of combinations. An atom's nucleus has an attractive force. Carbon's nucleus exerts a strong attractive force on covalently bonded elements because its valence level is close to the nucleus. This allows carbon to form short, strong, stable covalent bonds. Carbon atoms frequently bond with each other to fill their valence levels and satisfy the octet rule. They also bond with elements such as hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, producing long-chain molecules. Carbon atoms form the molecular basis for an enormous variety of compounds that participate in a wide range of chemical reactions, including those providing the basis of life. All life forms depend on biological processes involving carbon compounds. Chemistry helps scientists understand those processes. The circulation of blood, respiration, reproduction, and digestion are all series of chemical reactions. Photosynthesis, which occurs in plants and some microorganisms, is one important biological process for life on our planet. It converts light energy from the sun into chemical energy. Photosynthesis takes place in a plant's chloroplasts. Carbon dioxide from the air is combined with water and sunlight to produce glucose, a type of sugar. Glucose is converted into other chemicals, which the plant uses for energy. Photosynthesis produces most of the oxygen in the atmosphere, which is essential for the life of animals. Animals also benefit from the chemicals in plant and algae cells. When animals eat plants and algae, they absorb carbon-based substances such as glucose, starch, and carbohydrates that are essential for survival. Carnivores also gain plant nutrients by eating herbivores. Thanks to carbon compounds, the chemistry of life is sustained and maintained. Did you know? Although carbon is not an abundant element, it is distributed naturally in a wide variety of compounds. Carbon makes up only 0.025% of the Earth's crust, yet it forms more compounds than all the other elements can put together.
In the 1860s, John Hyatt, a printer and amateur chemist in Albany, New York, made news when he discovered a way to exploit the long, stringy molecules of cellulose found naturally in plants and created the first plastic. 50 years later, Belgium-born chemist Leo Baekeland took the next step in the discovery process.
One of the great pioneers was Leo Baekeland, who made a polymer called Bakelite. The usual thing, chance favoring the prepared mind. He was mixing things, but he knew how to explore them. He saw the interesting properties of this.
From two chemicals derived from coal, Baekeland discovered the world's first fully synthetic plastic. And the landscape of the 20th century was forever changed. What exactly is a plastic?
Plastics are polymers. So what are polymers? Polymers are long chain molecules, not individual molecules that are then clumped up into a solid of some sort. They're really molecules that extend out very far. Chains of carbon atoms, sometimes with some other elements in them. So what are the advantages? Well, it's moldable. You can pour it in some liquid form into some mold. Strength? Well, it's not bad. You can make bulletproof vests from plastics. And we've certainly seen that in terms of fibers, they can mimic or even surpass the properties of natural fibers. No fisherman in the world is going to go back to having nets out of cotton, you can bet. Those nets are going to be out of nylon.
So would you say the discovery of plastics is a great discovery?
we have science making polymers, making nylon, making rayon, which has a natural starting point but is modified into a polymer, making plexiglass or polyethylene. Those are the structural materials of our civilization. I think polymers are, in that sense, an example of the human creativity of chemistry. There's just nothing more beautiful than them.
A spider spins its web. The silk the spider is releasing is a polymer, a long molecule made up of repeating units of smaller monomers. One polymer may consist of hundreds or even thousands of monomers. Spider silk is made of short groups of amino acids. These groups are linked by chemical bonds. It's almost like joining chain links to make one long chain. A spider actually produces several different types of silk, each with its own sequence of monomers and each used for a specific purpose. Depending on the type of silk, the proper amino acids are linked together to form a liquid inside the spider's body. The liquid solidifies as it is forced out of the spinnerets, little nodules on the underside of the spider. Spider silk is the strongest natural fiber known. It's also elastic and can stretch to 3 times its starting length, ideal for weaving the world's first catch net, the spider's web. Scientists have been fascinated by the spider's ability to create different types of silk, each with its own unique properties. When this orb-weaving spider starts a new web, the amino acids in its silk-producing glands form an incredibly strong polymer called dragline silk. This creates the framework for the web. When the framework is done, the spider begins to produce a type of silk with a slightly different molecular structure. This is called capture silk. It is much more flexible than dragline silk. It is also sticky. The spider respins the web with capture silk. With the ability to stretch to 3 times its normal length, the web can catch and hold almost any insect that flies into it. When they catch their prey, spiders produce another type of silk that they wrap around the trapped insect. To say that spider silk is as strong as steel is an understatement. Ounce for ounce, spider silk is about 6 times stronger. What is it about the monomers of this polymer we call spider silk that gives it these properties? That's what researchers want to know. The race is on to analyze spider silk and produce a synthetic equivalent that could be used in a variety of ways. Since silk is a natural polymer and a protein, scientists are looking directly at spider DNA to see if they can unravel the silk's genetic code. They're also trying to figure out how a spider solidifies the liquid polymer at body temperature using only bodily fluids. Chemists have been able to make durable synthetic fibers, but only by boiling strong acids. If the genetic code is understood, scientists hope the information can be used to create synthetic spider silk through a process known as genetic engineering. The ability to do this would be very useful. We could make fabrics that are extremely strong, light, and elastic. For example, parachute cords could be made incredibly strong, making it easier to drop heavy objects from planes. Spider silk is insoluble in water and chemically unreactive, so it could be used in medicine for artificial tendons and ligaments, which need both strength and flexibility. While mass-producing spider silk is still out of our reach, humans have succeeded in creating many other polymers, including fibers. Synthetic polymers are often used in place of natural materials because they are stronger and cheaper. For example, car tires are made of a synthetic rubber, which is a hard, stretchy polymer. It doesn't soften when heated or become brittle when cold, like natural rubber. Monomers of synthetic rubber include chemicals such as butadiene, which is a hydrocarbon taken from petroleum. Butadiene is used to make a wide range of polymers. Butadiene molecules are highly reactive, which means they can combine with each other or with other molecules to form elastic rubber-like materials. Plastics and rubber are wonderful polymers that are part of modern life. They have many uses and last a long time. But there is a downside too. Unlike natural polymers, synthetic ones are not easy to destroy, and the trash soon builds up. The U.S. produces about 9 billion plastic bottles every year. About 2/3 of them end up in landfills. But many of these containers don't have to be trash. Bottles made of a plastic called polyethylene terephthalate, or PET, are a type of synthetic polymer of a class called polyesters. These bottles can be recycled to become backpacks, blankets, t-shirts, or even fleece pullovers. The recycling process involves breaking down PET into its monomer units and using those units to make new polymers. Preparing the bottles for their next lives requires a lot of moving and shaking. In this recycling facility, the bottles are separated from glass and aluminum recyclables and then baled like hay. Still looking a lot like garbage, the bottles head to a fiber processing plant where they are chopped, washed, and converted into plastic flakes. These flakes are melted and then compressed into a fine fiber, recognizable as former bottles only by their color. Ropes of white and green fibers are pulled into modern spinning machines, knit into fabric, and dyed. It takes about 25 2-liter bottles to make a man's fleece pullover. Fabric producers use 2.5 billion PET containers each year. Just think, the next time you have a soda, the polymers that make up the bottle could end up being next year's winter jacket.
Most scientists believe that life began on Earth as a result of reactions that took place between simple chemicals which existed on Earth from its beginning. Among the most abundant of these elements present on the early Earth were hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen. Today, about 95% of all living matter consists of just these 4 elements. Over billions of years, these 4 elements, plus small amounts of about 20 other elements, gradually formed larger and more complex compounds. Some of these compounds would hold the key to life. These were the compounds containing carbon. Carbon is special in that one carbon atom can bond with up to 4 other atoms. And, most importantly, carbon can easily bond with itself. This characteristic allows carbon to form large molecules. In nature, these molecules may take the form of chains of carbon atoms, or rings may be formed. Sometimes there are combinations of these. Attached to the carbons may be atoms of other elements, especially hydrogen, oxygen, or nitrogen. But carbon remains at the center of these kinds of molecules. It provides the skeleton for most of the compounds essential to life. Carbon-containing compounds, such as these, are called organic compounds. On Earth, organic compounds are almost exclusively associated with life. In fact, living things may be thought of as miniature chemical factories that together process millions of tons of organic compounds every day.